Nestle has been in Sri Lanka for over 100 years. We have been committed to enhancing the lives of the local community since the very beginning. Today, we are Sri Lanka's largest private sector buyer of fresh milk. As we look at the smiling faces of thousands of dairy farming families, we know that we have kept the promise we made 30 years ago. Nestle, empowering Sri Lankan dairy farmers.
A very good evening and welcome to Primetime News live from the Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. I'm Abushka Balasuriya.
Hello there, I'm Mahina Bongzo. Here's a look at what's coming up on the news tonight.
Section 2 notice එක ඉදිරිපත් කරන පොදු කාර්ය සඳහන් කරන්න. නීතිය දන්න නිසා තමයි කියන්නේ. හැම කන්කෝට් කාර්යයක්ම නීතිය දන්නවා කියලා හිතාගෙන කතා කරන්නේ. නඩු කීයක් පරදිනවද දවසකට?
Stay tuned for the heated exchanges from Parliament coming up on the bulletin later.
But for now, it's a look at your headlines. UN Human Rights Chief expresses regret over Sri Lanka's position on the OHCHR investigation. External intervention without adequate consideration results in destabilization. President Mahinda Rajapaksa addresses the UN General Assembly. Landslide warning issued in the Kegol district. Astonishing electricity bill causes a man to have a heart attack. United Nations Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights, Flavia Pansieri, says that the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights regrets the position of the Sri Lankan government. She made this statement presenting the oral update of the High Commissioner for Human Rights on the progress of the investigation on Sri Lanka at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva today. Exercising Sri Lanka's right of reply, Permanent Representative Ravinatha Ariasinghe said the government of Sri Lanka's opposition to the investigation is more justified today than it was in March this year.
We therefore very much regret the government's position specifically on the resolution and would like to encourage it to keep its channels open. Indeed, this investigation is a unique opportunity to establish an accurate record of patterns of human rights violations and related crimes alleged to have been committed by both sides during the latter part of the conflict. In this context, the ongoing campaign of threats, harassment, intimidation and reprisals by both state and non-state actors since March against civil society groups, human rights defenders and victims organizations, including those engaging with the international inquiry, is deplorable. This climate of intimidation and threat constitutes a real challenge for the investigation mandated by the Human Rights Council. It also undermines the prospects for Sri Lanka's own domestic investigations, where witness and victim protection has long been a concern.
GSL's opposition to the OHCHR investigation would seem even more justified today than it did at the time the resolution 25/1 was carried in late March 2014. For over the past 6 months, the operationalization of this resolution has clearly violated both the letter and spirit of the said resolution. Let me draw to this Council's attention several grave anomalies in the conduct of this investigation. It has gone beyond a time frame. It has expanded the scope and subject of discussion. In contravention of provisions of the PBI, the OHCHR has decided to appoint 3 high-level individuals instead of 2. By a of high-level international figures who are by no means technical experts relevant to the investigation, it seems that the OHCHR has sought to tacitly elevate the level of the OHCHR investigation to mimic an international COI.
Let me also say that the government has made commendable progress in resettlement and reconstruction. A more fundamental and far-reaching accountability process, which addresses both past and ongoing violation, however, is indispensable for Sri Lanka to come to terms with its past, to end impunity, to achieve reconciliation between communities, and to strengthen the rule of law. I therefore appeal once again to the authorities to cooperate fully with the investigation as well as with the relevant special procedures in the long-term interest of all people of Sri Lanka.
In recent weeks, we have heard many countries in this Council express concern about the increasing trend to assign the office of the High Commissioner with extensive investigative roles. Such arbitrary and selective action, especially with respect to what is clearly a politically motivated and highly politicized issue in the Council, giving disproportionate and unwarranted attention to Sri Lanka, is if left unchecked, not only calls into question the credibility of the functioning of the OHCHR and OHCHR-led processes, but also creates dangerous precedents. With all the calamities and afflictions around us today, Sri Lanka is clearly not a situation that requires the urgent and immediate attention of this Council. What Sri Lanka needs at this juncture is to be encouraged, not impeded.
We strongly support the independent international investigation into allegations of violations on both sides of the conflict. We welcome the expert team established by the High Commissioner and are confident that the team can deliver the robust investigation needed. Any genuine domestic accountability process should welcome information arising from the international investigation as a further contribution to establishing the truth. We call on the government to cooperate with the investigation and ensure that those who wish to engage with it are able to do so freely, without fear of intimidation, harassment or prosecution.
We are of the view that it is desirable for every country to have the means of addressing human rights violations through robust national mechanisms. The Council's efforts should be to provide technical assistance to them to develop the necessary institutions for this purpose. We believe that engaging the country concerned in a collaborative and constructive dialogue and partnership is a more pragmatic and productive way forward. We take positive note of Sri Lanka's engagement with the UN human rights mechanisms, despite its non-recognition of the recent resolutions adopted by the Council on Sri Lanka. Madam Vice President, we note with concern that the High Commissioner has not indicated how he intends to proceed with this investigation in the absence of cooperation from the country concerned. The composition of the OHCHR investigating team, its work methodology and sources of funding have not been shared with this Council. We would urge the High Commissioner to do so in order to maintain the credibility of this report.
In spite of many difficulties, the Sri Lankan government has been open to cooperation with the international human rights mechanisms. China commends Sri Lanka for these efforts and calls upon the international community to show respect and support to Sri Lanka's national reconciliation effort. We believe this will contribute to the country's economic and social development as well as to the equal enjoyment of human rights by all Sri Lankans.
The willingness of the Namibian people to embrace national reconciliation after independence has brought about peace in the country, but we needed to be given time and space to build trust and healing. It is for that reason that the international community should not impose solutions on Sri Lanka, but that it should encourage the national process, which will be sustainable and lasting.
We therefore believe that the intrusive mandate given to the OHCHR by Resolution 25/1 to carry out investigations on Sri Lanka is unwarranted, especially in the context where the country is implementing its own domestic processes.
Russia has consistently spoken against the examination in the Human Rights Council of Sri Lanka. We do not see any objective justification for this. We cannot agree with the majority of conclusions and evaluations we have heard today. We consider that the activities of the so-called OHCHR mission falls outside the mandate of the OHCHR and amounts to unjustified interference in the domestic affairs of the country.
President Mahinda Rajapaksa says that Sri Lanka is continuing on a deeply satisfying and transformative journey in the interest of all the people in the country. He made this statement in his address to the 69th General Assembly of the United Nations.
Republic of Sri Lanka.
The opening debate of the 69th General Assembly of the United Nations commenced at the UN headquarters in New York yesterday. A majority of the heads of states of the 193 member nations of the UN are attending the General Assembly. President Mahinda Rajapaksa addressed the UNGA at dawn today, Sri Lankan time.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Mahinda Rajapaksa, President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka.
Human rights are used as a tool to implement motivated agendas. With no understanding or appreciation of the complexity of issues in the countries concerned, human rights should be recognized by all as a moral and ethical concept rather than a political tool. External intervention without adequate consideration of the structures in a society and cultural traditions of the countries where such intervention take place inevitably results in destabilization, which is very much in evidence today in most parts of the world, whose conflict Sri Lanka has also become an unfortunate victim of ill-conceived agendas of some in the Human Rights Council, who pay scant regard to the substantial progress achieved by Sri Lanka in reconstruction and enmity towards none. We hope that the international community too will reciprocate and assist Sri Lanka in a domestic process of reconciliation and economic development without exerting undue pressure on us.
President Rajapaksa had also proposed during the UNGA sessions that the structure of the UN Security Council should be changed so that it better suits the modern world. The President had also noted that Sri Lanka is also committed to support all multilateral efforts to counter terrorism financing, piracy and all forms of international organized crime.
Although almost a week has passed since the Uva Provincial Council poll concluded, there seems to be no end to the tensions in the province. The various political parties and groups continue to express criticism and opinions on this matter.
The election in the south concluded with no violence. The election in the west and north also concluded with no violence. In Uva, there were many acts of violence. Political parties contesting the elections do not compete against the political parties, but against the government. They have to compete against the police, public institutions and state money. They lay foundation stones for projects. They lay the foundation stone previously and plan completion for close to the election. This must be stopped through election laws, but the Elections Commissioner does not do this.
Meanwhile, leader of the new Sama Samaja Party, Dr. Vikramabahu Karunaratne, says that the electoral system in the country has been set a wrong example by the situation in Monaragla. He made this statement at a media briefing in Colombo today.
It is not a big deal when thugs who are generally in hiding in villages and cities suddenly come out of the dark and commit acts of thuggery. Similar acts were committed during elections even back then. But the violence which took place this time was different. First, the number of seats in the Monaragala was increased. Then officials were shifted from one place to another. Subsequently, they got down the officials they wanted. Then they got down around 100 defenders, and ever since, cabinet ministers went on a rampage. This is the new arrangement. This violence is far from over. It's happening even after the elections. They are still beating up those who emerged victorious. Because the government sees Monaragala as the model, they can win using the Monaragala model.
මොනරාග මොඩල් එකෙන් පුළුවන් දිනන්න.
The suspect who was arrested in connection with the attack on Newsfirst Badula correspondent in the Haliala town has been remanded until the 1st of this month.
The suspect was produced before the Passara Circuit Magistrates Court today. He was later taken in an ambulance. Newsfirst correspondent Chandana Kuruparachi was attacked when he attempted to cover a clash between two groups of political party supporters in the Haliala town. JVP Politburo member MP Sunil Handunetti visited Kuruparachi, who is being treated at a private hospital in Colombo today, and inquired into his well-being.
It has become habitual for the government to engage in elections by inciting fear in the media, depriving democracy, attacking journalists and breaking their jaws and limbs. As people who appreciate the value of democracy, all of us must set aside party differences and condemn this malicious attack.
Chandana
Kuruparachi was taken to another private hospital in Colombo today to undergo surgery. Protests were held in several areas today as well, condemning attacks on journalists. Opposition member of the Haliala Pradeshya Sabha staged a demonstration outside the Pradeshya Sabha today. The Hambantara Journalists Association organized a demonstration in Ambalantata today.
We say to these powerful persons not to strangle themselves by laying their hands on journalists. We say that the rulers must be held responsible for this. Do not protect things like this. We demand that they be given the maximum punishment.
The Southern Lanka Media Centre organised a demonstration opposite the Gaul bus stop today in protest of the attack on Chandana Kuruparachi.
Meanwhile, members of the opposition of the Dehiyovita Pradesha Sabha staged a demonstration today in protest against the attacks on journalists.
The premises of the Dehiyovita Pradesha Sabha was closed when its members arrived at the location wearing green bands in protest. The meeting was scheduled to convene at 9:30 a.m. today. However, as quorum was established by the chairman and Pradesha Sabha members of the ruling party, the meeting was convened and concluded prior to the scheduled time. Thereafter, there was an exchange of words between the demonstrating Pradesha Sabha members and members of the ruling party.
Today the Pradesh Sabha doors were shut and opposition members were not allowed to enter. They postponed the session in an unfair, illegal and oral way and they left the building. This is the only meeting which takes place once a month to address the issues of the general public. We commenced the monthly meeting at 9:30. We concluded the meeting at 9:40 according to our agenda after the council report was passed. 10 members of the ruling party were present for the meeting. We only need 7 members for the quorum, so by 9:40 we were able to conclude the meeting.
Minister Dilan Pereira issued a statement today in response to the attack that occurred in Haliala.
The statement reads that following the sudden attack, Harin Fernando had visited the residence of Minister Dilan Pereira on Bandaranaike Mawatha in Badulla. In his statement, Minister Dilan Pereira notes that while he had taken all steps to provide the necessary security, only Harin Fernando is aware of the reason for the visit. The minister notes that even when Harin Fernando was in Colombo, he had called the police special task force to provide security for his home and office. Minister Dilan Pereira notes that since he has faced both victory and defeat in politics, he does not engage in such actions and requests that Harin Fernando bear defeat with political maturity. Furthermore, the minister notes in his statement that 2 journalists whom he knows well were also attacked during the clashes and that while he is saddened by the incident, he condemns it personally and on behalf of the government.
Journalists are not criminals. You will need them someday.
Then I agree.
$1 billion so far.
How many dollars have been sold?
If they don't agree with our figure, we stand by our figure.
Set with international newsmakers.
But you have been very silent on this subject.
You will see how United Nations has changed.
Human rights should be observed. Why a policy for the developing world and why another policy for the Western world?
There really is an onus on the media to make clear.
Welcome back to the news. The book Development and Reality, authored by B.M. Chandatilaka, was launched in Colombo last evening. Veteran diplomat Dr. Jayant Dhanapala was the chief guest at the event.
B.M. Chandatilaka, a renowned academic in the agriculture discipline, formerly served as the assistant director of the Department of Agriculture.
I'd like to pay a tribute to Mr. Chandatilaka. To me, at a time when our politicians are very fond of dividing the country into patriots and those who are traitors, here is a classic example of a patriot. Unlike the many people in the political field who have their sons and daughters abroad, some of them smuggle them into diplomatic missions. So here is a classic example of a citizen, public-spirited citizen who comes back and writes a book about his thoughts. The state of affairs in our country is so bad that we need to look beyond the glorious past that we are very fond of talking about and try to identify the main elements of our society that we seem to have neglected. The disciplines, the old customs and traditions, and the respect for law and for society and its traditions.
Now, we received an astonishing report from Baddegama, where a house in the area received an electricity bill of 150,000 rupees. It should be noted that this house has just 6 light bulbs that function.
This house in the Udagama area in Akuratiya, Baddegama, is occupied by a carpenter, his wife and 2 children. This family claims that ever since they've lived in this house, they have received a monthly electricity bill of just 500 rupees or less. Therefore, for the 68 units utilized for the month of August this year, as mentioned in the electricity bill, a payment of 842 rupees and 40 cents should be made. However, the total amount payable has been recorded as 146,561 rupees and 78 cents. When Newsfirst contacted the electrical engineer of the Baddegama Pradeshya Sabha, he said that this figure was a mistake and that steps are underway to rectify it. However, this act of negligence ended in tragedy.
When my husband saw this, he got sick. He was admitted to the Karapiti hospital for 4 days. What little money I had saved was also spent because of this.
The National Building Research Organization states that the Kegaul district may face a risk of landslides and rock slides owing to the prevalent weather conditions.
Releasing a communique, the NBRO noted that areas which fall under the purview of the Daranyagala and Bulat-Kopitiya divisional secretariats, as well as areas of Kitulgala and Gattiyamulla, are at a risk of landslides. The NBRO adds that the public must exercise caution, especially in areas where there are slopes and bunds, as well as on roads.
United National Party parliamentarian Sujeeva Senasinghe raised questions in Parliament today regarding a 3.5-acre plot of land in Rajagiriya which belongs to the family of Ravi Wettesinghe.
Minister, when you take over the private lands of the people in this way, they do not receive redress from the law. On what basis was this done? When it is being taken over for a public need, the need must be specified.
As per the Greater Jayawardhanapura plan, lands, irrigation lands, farmland and wetlands were all brought under public ownership with 1 gazette notice. 250 was paid per perch. The land around Parliament was not taken over to be handed over to anyone else. These lands are being taken over for private companies. The government has been toying with this for a long time. Please state for what public purpose the land was appropriated. It was not done to broaden the road. There is a development plan.
As a lawyer, you know that when a Section 2 notice is given, the public purpose must be specified.
The UDA Act is the most powerful act in Sri Lanka. Prime Minister Premadasa enacted it as the Minister of the UDA. As per this law, there is no land for which a case can be filed. Only compensation can be sought.
නඩුවක් ඉදිරිපත් කරන වන්දිය පමණ ඉල්ලන්න පුළුවන්. UDA Act එකේ ඉන්න නීතිය දන්න නිසා තමයි කියන්නේ හැම කල්කෝට්කාරයෙක්ම නීතිය දන්නවා කියලා හිතාගෙන කතා කරන්නේ. නඩු කීයක් පරදිනවද දවසකට? ලංකාවේ නඩු කීයක් කල්කෝට්කාරයෝ පරද්දනවද? තේරෙනවද? අපි ওই ගිනි පොලි කාර්යයන්ගේ පැත්ත ගත්ත මිනිස්සු නෙමෙයි. අපි සාමාන්‍ය මිනිහගේ පැත්ත ගත්ත මිනිස්සු.
Meanwhile, UMP Deputy Leader Sajid Premadasa drew the attention of the House today to the plight of people affected by the drought.
සමහර තැන් වලට 6000යි මල්ල දෙනවා. දින 12ක් වැඩ කරලා.
Some areas have received the aid package worth 6,000 rupees following 12 days of work. Other areas received the 3,000 rupee aid package after 6 days of work. But there was another instance where a 2,500 rupee aid package was given. No work was taken from the recipients of this. It was an unusual relief package. This relief package was given to everyone on the Monragala district electoral list with 2 days to go for the Uva Provincial Council election. Honourable Chairman, isn't this a violation of human rights?
මේක සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම මානව හිමිකම් උල්ලංඝනය කිරීමක්.
The Treasury alone allocates 2,124 million via a single cabinet paper. This was for the 6,000 rupee aid package program and for the removal of silt from the reservoirs. The government's attention has now been drawn towards the plight of people in other drought-affected districts, and a decision will be taken in the coming week on whether they will be given the 6,000 rupee aid package or a different aid package.
It's time now for Action TV.
A comprehensive analysis on this year's advanced level economics question paper, compiled on the instruction of the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, was submitted to the Kandy District Coordinating Office of the Commission today. The report was submitted by 2 of the 5 university lecturers on whom the Commission had conferred the responsibility of compiling this report. The Commission conferred this responsibility on the 5 lecturers on Monday when it took up a complaint in which 10 lecturers, including the 5, and the Commissioner General of Examinations had been cited as respondents. The complaint was lodged by the General Secretary of the Ceylon Teachers Union. The complaint challenges the accuracy of the advanced level economics question paper and the marking scheme. The 10 lecturers have been cited as respondents by the complainant on the basis of a letter they addressed to the Commissioner General of Examinations 16 days prior to the marking of answer scripts on the 30th of August. Through this 12-page letter, the lecturers request that the Commissioner General of Examinations take steps to rectify a situation where students who sat for the examination would lose out on 15 marks as a result of the question paper being flawed and containing questions that are in violation to the fundamentals and concepts of economics. Nevertheless, when the marking of answer scripts commenced, the only additional guideline that was given in the marking scheme was that it be considered that there are 2 correct answers to question 46 in the question paper. On Monday, when the complaint was taken up at the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, one of the factors raised by the lecturers who had been cited as respondents was that due consideration had not been shown to the letter addressed by them to the Commissioner General of Examinations on the 30th of August. They also revealed before the Commission that the marking scheme for the examination was flawed. At the end of the almost 3-hour-long inquiry, the Commission instructed the lecturers to compile a report, including the points raised by them, and submit it to the Commissioner General of Examinations, copied to the Human Rights Commission within 3 days.
In keeping with this instruction, we submitted the copy of the report to the Commission on behalf of all the university lecturers. We are doing all of this in order to secure fair treatment for the talented students who sat for the advanced level examination who have been done an injustice to the question paper and the marking scheme.
The university lecturers have taken steps to ensure that copies of the report which was presented to the Commission today are couriered to the Commission's head office in Colombo and to the Commissioner General of Examinations. As per the instructions of the Human Rights Commission, the Commissioner General must submit written responses to the university lecturers' report on or before the 3rd of October.
Still in local news, 400 families in Sita area in Nuwara are at risk of losing their lands as per an order issued by the Department of Wildlife Conservation. A demonstration was staged in protest against this order.
The demonstration was staged in the Sita Alley area, obstructing the Nuwara area Badula main road. Residents of the Sita area, Rendapola, Mipilapana and surrounding villages took part in the demonstration. The demonstrators stated that they have been residing in the Sita Alley area for around 80 years. They added that they are being evicted despite the fact that they have been provided with infrastructure facilities such as roads, electricity, telecommunication and permanent residences.
Around 400 families have been living in this land for the past 30 to 80 years, which they claim belong to the wildlife. This section of land where the people live houses several state institutes, the Ambevilla School, the Ambevilla Temple, the Sita Ilya Gram Seva quarters, a health center, cemeteries and the main water supply lines, all of which have been established by the government.
Newsfirst made inquiries from the Nuwara area district secretary DPG Kumarasiri on this matter. He said that the Supreme Court has ordered that 86 families be evicted from this area. However, Kumarasiri added that discussions are underway with the objective of securing some sort of relief for these families. Nuwara area Mayor Mahinda Dodampa Gamage, who arrived at the scene of the demonstration, promised that a solution will be given following discussions with the President.
International media reports say Australia has confirmed it will sign a deal with Cambodia to resettle refugees in the Southeast Asian nations. Australia's Immigration Minister Scott Morrison, who was to sign a deal in Cambodia today, said only those who chose to go to Cambodia would be resettled there. Accordingly, Sri Lankan refugees currently in Australia too will be eligible for resettlement in Cambodia. The deal follows an announcement by Morrison yesterday on legislation to reintroduce temporary protection visas.
International media reports say the deal has drawn immediate criticism from rights groups who say it will not afford refugees sufficient protection. They accuse Australia of failing to meet its international obligations by sending refugees to an impoverished nation ill-equipped to handle them. Under current policy, asylum seekers who arrive in Australia by boat are detained and processed offshore. If found to be refugees, they are resettled outside Australia. Meanwhile, Australia will reintroduce a controversial temporary visa system to deal with the huge backlog of asylum seekers.
These are temporary visas. They do not provide a path to permanent protection visas. That's very clear in our arrangements. Any and all new illegal arrivals will also continue to be transferred to Manus Island or Nauru for offshore processing and resettlement, and this policy will apply in all such cases without exception, as it is a necessary part of our border protection regime.
Dr. Nishal N. Pandey, the director of the Centre for South Asian Studies in Kathmandu, Nepal, says that the SAARC region had better connectivity as a region 100 years ago. He made this statement at a public lecture organised by the Lakshman Kadirgama Institute for International Relations and Strategic Studies, titled Thoughts on the 18th SAARC Summit.
100 years ago, we were better connected as a region. 100 years ago, one could travel easily from Afghanistan to Pakistan to India to Nepal, from Nepal onwards to Rangoon. Today we have made this impossible because of security related sensitivities, correct or fantasized, into making the borders into barriers. 100 years ago our borders were bazaars. People interacted freely. They crisscrossed borders. There was a free flow of goods and ideas. All this region has all the ingredients of a successful enterprise. From culture to art, from scholarship to economy, we have everything. The only thing that is lacking is that desired push needed to make this enterprise, make this project a success.
The Make in India campaign was launched by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi across the globe today via live webcast. An event organized by the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka to present the live webcast launch was held in Colombo today. The Make in India campaign seeks to focus on India as an investment and manufacturing destination, inviting foreign entrepreneurs to manufacture in India. The launch was followed by a discussion soliciting views and perspectives of the business community in Sri Lanka on measures required to be put in place in order to make India and the region a greater part of the global value chain.
In your sports news tonight, the Sri Lanka women's cricket team failed to make it through to the final round at the 17th Asian Games held in South Korea today. Sri Lanka suffered a 25-run defeat at the hands of Bangladesh in the semi-finals. Batting first, the Bangladeshi women posted 95 runs for the loss of 4 wickets in their allotted 20 overs. Lata Mendel was unbeaten on 34 runs. The Sri Lankan women were then bowled out for 70 in 18.5 overs. Pancha Ghosh bagged 5 wickets for 10 runs for the Bangladeshis. Sri Lanka will face off against China for the bronze medal tomorrow. Now, Dora the Explorer, the title character from the hit global children's TV series, is in Sri Lanka.
That's right. Dora the Explorer, accompanied by some of her friends, checked in at a hotel in Colombo today ahead of their 4 performances which will be held over the weekend.
Dora the Explorer and her friends will participate in a meet and greet on Saturday and Sunday, that's tomorrow and the day after, from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Dora the Explorer and her friends will stage 4 performances, 2 each on Saturday and Sunday at 3:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m.
Well, Madhushka, I'm sure children of all ages will be very excited come this weekend to see Dora and her friends. I think they're going to go on an adventure where they're going to look for the missing teddy bear.
Well, yeah, of course, and I need to apologize. I said today and or tomorrow and day after. It's in fact the day after tomorrow and Sunday. Tomorrow is Friday. Apologies for that. I got my days mixed up.
But I think you two were a little bit excited when Dora came up.
I was. She's very big. Bigger than I expected.
Well, with that, we conclude today's edition of Prime Time News. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Mahina Bongso.
And I'm Madhushka Balasurya. Good night.